you see, that didn't take all too long. Frenchie is still here with Tom, and we are going to be jumping into round number 3, where we have two very familiar faces to the stream, potentially a grudge match if you were to ask one of them. We're going to have Eric, friend of the stream, who helps set everything up and runs everything here. He's going to be going up against a resident brewer of the store, Bismon, as they are going to be going head-to-head in the feature match area once I turn the camera back on.
Yeah, it would not be a Tuesday Pioneer night at Card Art without some sort of, just a bunch of brews coming through. It looks like there's some interesting camera issues, so we might give all of our folks a moment to make sure we are getting things all straightened out. And yeah, looks like our friends ended up sitting sitting in the wrong side. So we will definitely get all that figured out in a moment. But yeah, so we do have Bismon playing a pretty spicy toolboxy deck focused around Oculus, playing green and blue, specifically calling out the cards of Eldritch Evolution as well as Enigmatic Incarnation as ways to toolbox out the eyeball consistently on like turn 3, turn 4, etc. Especially given that you're probably on not Simic. It looks like we are Sultai, excuse me. And yeah, on the other side, we do have Eric playing Izzet Ensoul, one of his classic decks, really comfortable on the archetype, being able to just put a bunch of trinkets into play and make them into big 5/5s or 5/4s that discover and all that fun stuff, as well as just some other fun, aggressive, different synergies.
Yeah, and we see Bismon already taking a quick damage from his Llanowar Waste, a Mana Confluence, as well as Eric just shocks in a Steam Vents very inconspicuously, but then a Glissa Sunslayer winds up hitting the battlefield on Bismon's side. So it just looks like he's playing just straight up the Golgari mid-range that hurts yourself.
Yeah, Golgari mid-range that hurts yourself. That's usually not where you want to be against a deck that does have red in its color identity. But, sometimes it can work, because Glissa is a very good blocker, in particular against all of these various different, massive creatures coming out of the Izzet Ensoul deck. But we did have a Legion Extruder here coming in and being able to deal with the Elf to kind of slow down this mana engine coming out from Bismon. And yeah, we're going to just get a card and, lose even more life, because why not?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what Bismon wants to do with the deck anyway, just gaining a lot of advantage over here. Eric is going to wind up taking a bit of damage here. No enchantments on his side to get killed by this Glissa.
Yeah, but it looks like there was an enchantment coming in on Bismon's side. A nice little Omen of the Sea. So as mentioned before, there is Enigmatic Incarnation in the deck to be able to try and get Oculus into play. This is one of the best ways to do it. You're going to be scrying to and drawing a card, hopefully finding you that Enigmatic Incarnation to then be able to just sack the Omen of the Sea to go find your Oculus.
Yeah, so it looks like that's going to be potentially a plan here for Bismon, as Bismon has been knocked down to 16 off of his own lands. Eric going to untap here with 2 lands of his own. Now the Izzet Ensoul deck want to put a pair of scissors on certain things like this Darksteel Citadel, although a shocking in of this Steam Vents is actually going to be for just Voldaren Epicure. So we saw that from Pluid last round, but Eric is going to be the one doing it this time around as that blood token hits the battlefield. And there is a pair of scissors in hand. What do we want to put it on? It looks like this token.
Yeah, probably on the... Oh, no, we're just going to be playing an Inti, saving the scissors for a following turn. Probably not the worst thing in the world here. Definitely using the blood token from the Epicure for some different reasons in this deck.
I am, just as like a side note, Inti is probably my favorite non-black card to be printed in the last couple of years. This card just does so much on a stick while still having like a very solid red identity to it. Very powerful synergy within the set in and of itself. But speaking of decks that have powerful synergy in the sets that they were printed, the Enigmatic Incarnation that you were talking about, Frenchie, hits the battlefield from Bismon, and I think that Omen's turned into an eyeball.
Yep, we got some Abhorrent Oculus coming out. This all-star that everyone keeps trying to cheat into play in various different formats. Turns out the one that people are having the most success with in Pioneer is actually green, not black or white, which are the typical reanimation colors.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen the Azorius and Oculus deck in Standard try to be ported over into Pioneer. It hasn't had nearly as much success. Some people nowadays are trying to put Oculus into play the fair way. Others are trying to cheat it into play with Collected Company. And Bismon here is doing it with enchantments. That's not Abhorrent Oculus. I typoed that. That would have been such a good segue.
Yeah. Honestly, it's a pretty sick idea here. You even see an Eldritch Evolution hit the bin, so there's multiple ways to be able to get this Oculus into play. Notably, Eldritch Evolution can get you an Oculus in play on turn 2 with an elf.
Ooh,
it's kind of insane.
That's gross. You can also just have a mana left over too if you tap the elf to use the. So the Eldritch Evolution is something I was thinking of Neoform in my head, which is another way that people have been trying to cheat Abhorrent Oculus into play.
Yeah, just all of these. It seems like in standard, it's a typical slower reanimation tempo-y deck. In modern, it's kind of like this just additional side quest you get in a frog deck.
Yeah.
But here in Pioneer, it's just we're gonna toolbox our Oculus into play.
All right, so Eric, though, is throwing a pair of scissors on this Darksteel Citadel with the Inti trigger. It will be bigger than the Oculus, and it does not die to Death Touch from Glissa, thanks to Darksteel Citadel being indestructible. Looks like a Cryptic Coat was pitched to the graveyard in order to trigger that Inti trigger, and a Voldaren Epicure has hit the exile zone right now. So now it's on Bismon. Do you want to lose your Glissa? Do you want to just take 6? Taking 6 puts you down to 8, and with Shrapnel Blast in the deck, we're just going to use this manifest token here. So trampling on over for just 4 damage.
Yeah, probably good here just because we know that there's a lot of incidental burn coming out of Eric's deck, whether it's like the Epicure dealing 1 when it enters, or just, Shrapnel Blast, as we said. Looks like we're going to have this Epicure just go ahead and take 1 for the team, make sure Glissa doesn't get additional value, but we will also be taking 5, going down to 8. We're in racing territory here, folks. Let's see who's got on their running shoes and is going to make it to the finish line first.
Yeah, most importantly, you have to block that Glissa or you're losing your scissors too.
Yeah.
That's a little bit of an unfortunate side effect here for this matchup from Eric's side. It looks like Bismon is going to wind up taking a bunch of damage himself, and there's that Eldritch Evolution on the Elvish Mystic that just got played. What else could we be finding here? Second Eye?
No, yeah. Second Eye is an option. There's also probably some additional hate pieces that exist as one-ofs. A Reclamation Sage is pretty spicy here.
This is like the first off, this is a sick play to wind up having the Reclamation Sage in order to come into the battlefield and get rid of the scissors, but this is like the most toolboxy of toolbox things I've ever seen in a while. Is use my 3 mana to get my 3 mana destroy target enchantment spell.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, it just, you get it whenever you want. I doubt there's more than 1 in the deck,
I don't think so.
Yeah. And it looks like we are all tied up at 8 apiece here. Unfortunately for Eric, Bismon has done a lot to be able to kind of contain the various different aggressive plans. Eric's also not had the best curve out. We were stuck on 3 lands, including using one of our lands for a creature. Made it a little bit awkward. We still have this Legion Extruder kind of in play, as well as the Blood Token, an Inti. I think the issue is I saw a redundant Inti in hand, which is kind of sitting dead.
Yeah.
And I don't know what else we can really do here. In particular, red-blue not well known for dealing with enchantments, and this 5/5 flyer is presenting a pretty big problem.
Yeah, so Eric does have access to Shrapnel Blast in his deck, but the big thing is going to be how do you trample over the 3 toughness that is being presented by Bismon's side with a 2/2 that will only become a 3/3 with its own trigger.
Not to mention first strike. Oh,
Glissa's tapped, yeah.
Yeah,
but we got the Reclamation Stage, and that is a Manifest Dread underneath it there from Bismon.
Yeah, we got quite a bit of toughness here, and it's not going to do too much.
You said redundant Inti in hand, looks like potentially also second Darksteel Citadel, and then last card being unknown from Eric is he just kind of lets out a shrug there and is like, well, am I dead? Or can I actually stay alive and try to top deck something else during attack?
Yeah, I think I saw also a Smuggler's Copter possibly.
Oh, that's what that is. Oh, there is Shrapnel Blast in hand too.
Okay, so Okay. Let's see if Bismon wants to block here or is willing to take some damage, because if he's like, I'll take all 3. Yeah, he's just dead right away, but very smartly realizes, I just want to make sure I get everything in front of it.
Not chancing this. This is going to block all 3 of the damage here. Now, Eric did discard Smuggler's Copter to keep redundant Inti because now you can play a blocker, so you're just not straight up dead next turn.
Exactly. And finding another land off the top was pretty nice here. We're going to be able to double spell. So now we can do both Inti and Shrapnel Blast. So Inti here can probably chump block the Glissa. And we can also Shrapnel Blast down the Abhorrent Oculus. So while we're not closing the game, we're at least not really dying soon.
Actually, being able to Shrapnel Blast the Abhorrent Oculus also means that we don't have to block with Inti, and we could potentially be looking for like, oh, Ensoul Artifact, Inti trigger, swing, win the game. But it's a lot to ask right now.
Yeah, and on the flip side, we also do have the play of just block Glissa, take 5, Shrapnel Blast, face and pray. I don't like that play, but it exists.
It does exist, and if there's any other sort of burn spells in Eric's deck, I mean, top deck second Shrapnel Blast would be lethal.
Oh, very lethal.
Yeah, but now, big question here for Eric is, do you block, do you blast? And Bismon is the one presenting those questions. Bismon does have 2 pain lands on his side, though, and it does look like the Shrapnel Blast is going to go after the Abhorrent Oculus pre-damage.
Yeah, and I think this... From my perspective, this is probably the correct play here, just because the Oculus is also going to present multiple creatures in the coming turns as well. And, daring Bismon to draw a card and lose life is honestly not the worst thing in the world. But it looks like we're just going to take the counter off the Darksteel Citadel. Might as well.
That's good.
Sure. Sure, and we see Eric also just like sighing in disgust as well. Yeah, that, who cares? I don't even need a toolbox this Oculus. I can just cast them because I sacrifice enough things into my graveyard.
Yep, so just casting it the good old-fashioned way here. Now Eric going to be untapping, takes a look at the battlefield as another Manifest Dread hits, and I mean, there's like one card that could do something, which is another Shrapnel Blast, but no, it's another Inti instead. So Bismon is going to be taking game number 1 as the Sultai Enigmatic Incarnation Abhorrent Oculus, as many adjectives as I could probably throw in there, deck takes game number 1.
Yeah, this honestly, like, this feels like the most Bismon of Bismon decks, Like, it's a green deck, it's an 8-elf deck, it's incredibly toolboxy, it's trying to do like mostly fair things with a slightly unfair angle.
Yep.
But for the most part, you're just doing a lot of fair, like green, black, kind of mid-rangey things, and you just have this nice little explosivity out of just like getting Oculus out of your deck like 8 different ways.
The most un-Bismon-like thing about this deck is the fact that the toolbox package is in the main deck and not the Wishboard.
Yes, very true. Very true.
Something that we're used to Bismon usually having with
the
Fae of Wishes and everything.
So many Fae of Wishes decks. Like, the Fae of Wishes plus Fires of Invention deck that he was playing a while ago. That one always sticks out in my head.
Yeah, that's definitely one of the decks of all time that Bismon has played.
Yep.
But now Eric, like you mentioned, the Izzet Ensoul deck doesn't have the greatest answers to resolved enchantments, so you're probably going to be kind of crutching on what you could be bringing to the table as far as on the stack interaction goes from their side.
Yeah. In particular, I know that there's stuff. What's the improvised counterspell again? It's
Metallic Rebuke.
Metallic Rebuke. I think that's like either a 3 or a 4 of. I'm sure that if there are additional spell pierces, we're probably going to see it. Especially given if we can blow out an attempt at a turn 2 Oculus.
Oh yeah,
that would be really huge. It does also mean holding back a bit of mana early to be able to prevent these plays, which is a little awkward as the deck that's trying to be the aggressor in the matchup.
Mm-hmm.
But realistically, being able to blow out basically your opponent's entire turn 2 as well as their mana dork that they really tried to protect on turn 1, probably worth just slowing yourself down by 1 mana and playing 2 1-drops early instead of a 1 into a 2.
Yeah. Meanwhile, on Bismon's side, we're a Sultai deck, so we have access to green, which is probably the best color in the world at dealing with any sort of artifacts that your opponent is going to be throwing at you.
In particular, exiling is not uncommon here. Frankly, given that you're playing both green and black, I would be very surprised if there wasn't any sort of Terra Sunders as additional sideboard cards coming in, just because of how flexible the card is. It's just absurdly good. And then also, I wouldn't be surprised to see some additional spicy, like, one-of cards coming in for that Eldritch Evolution and Enigmatic package. I'm trying to think of some interesting ones that can specifically deal with artifacts and enchantments. Like, obviously, we already had the Rex Sage in the main, but it would be really interesting to see something like what is it? Mask Vandal to exile and do
Oh, the
something.
changeling one. Yeah.
Yeah, that one's fun. You do have to exile something from your graveyard, but typically because you're going to Eldritch Evolution or since you're doing either Eldritch Evolution or Enigmatic Incarnation to get it, you're going to put put something in the graveyard. Unfortunately, it needs to be an enchantment creature, but if you exile that elf that you get, you can just get this out of your deck and just exile anything, which is honestly pretty solid. Gets rid of a Darksteel Citadel even
yeah, that's
before it's
big.
reanimated. Land destruction? That's just rude.
In my Pioneer, never. No.
Nah.
We're in Sultai Ponza now when it comes to this matchup. But players are shuffling up, drawing their 7. It looks like Eric, having lost game number 1, will be on the play here, which is probably pretty good for the deck that's going to be playing red and blue spells that are pretty cheap. A shock in of the Steam Vents, and we got a lookout coming out here. A little Spyglass Siren hits the battlefield on turn 1.
Yep, coming with a map. Are we going to be doing some exploring? Usually not. This deck tends to not do as much exploring and just trying to suit up that map and make it big, feisty, and aggressive. But it looks like we are currently just going to swing in with the Siren for a nice bit of damage. And then let's see what else Eric's got cooking for us this turn.
All right, Soken's is the land for turn. That's going to be a Voldaren Epicure, so that's going to put Bismon down to 18 to match the shock from Eric's side off that Steam Vent. Most importantly, we have Spell Pierce mana available, and if that we go for that Eldritch Evolution on turn number 2 here from Bismon's side, he will not be happy about that.
Yeah, but I think we do just kind of have to represent this. Bismon playing pretty sly here, just throwing down a Momentum Breaker, trying to get rid of one of these creatures. I did see the Spell Pierce in Eric's hand, so it's not a bluff. This is real, and it looks like it was used to protect these 1/1s. We're going to be able to come in for an additional couple of points of damage, and in particular here, we have not started our engines, so there's going to be, if there's anything else coming out that cares about it, hasn't started yet, so we're not getting some additional value.
Yeah, this Momentum Breaker is starting to be a Bismon special for me. I mean, I've watched a lot of Standard recently when we've been playing here at the store on Thursdays and Sundays, and Bismon's best friends with any sort of flicker effect that you can use on those like enchantment things. So Momentum Breaker has been a spell I've seen him cast a handful of times here. Does look like we are going to be cracking the map, deciding we want to put the card in our graveyard. Didn't quite see what it was due to, unfortunately, the glare that's on the screen right now. This does make an attack for 3 here coming out from Eric, puts Bismon down to 15, and Eric's follow-up is just going to be Shadow Spear. That's not the worst thing in the world.
Shadow Spear, that's a great follow-up if I'm going to say anything. Being able to just, suit up our flyer with some lifelink and additional bit of just everything. Can't complain here. The only thing we're missing is Death Touch to be able to deal with Oculus just really cleanly.
Yeah, the downside here is there was no third land drop coming out from Eric, so it is just going to be naked Enigmatic Incarnation from Bismon. Nothing to do at the end of turn with that activation. Instead, just going to be passing the turn back over to Eric. But, I mean, Bismon's probably not going to be worried too much about having like an Omen of the Sea get countered at this point when he has 4 total mana, 5 next turn.
Exactly, and we did find our next land drop. This one might be a creature at some point, but it looks like first we are going to be equipping the Shadow Spear, getting in for about 4 damage here, unless there's some weird free spell. I doubt it. And gaining some life, which is not insignificant when you're possibly staring down some 5/5 flyers in the future.
So Eric's still keeping that 1 mana open. I think maybe saw Torch the Tower in hand, but don't quite know what else it could be. Oh, there's the Omen of the Sea. So this is going to definitely be representing the fact that Abhorrent Oculus hits the battlefield next turn.
Or end of this turn. Yes.
Which then brings a manifest token along with it at the beginning of Eric's turn.
Yep. So definitely going to be starting to populate the board with a lot of powerful, creatures, blockers, etc. Very, very smart on Eric to make sure that we are pumping up the Siren to make sure that those blockers that we are making every turn aren't as effective. And we're probably just going to use this Epicure as a chump blocker at some point.
Ooh, we have Shrapnel Blasts in him from Eric as well, so
that's clutch.
Yeah, being able to blast away the first Oculus could be pretty powerful. And
But we're gonna get 2 this turn, so who cares?
That's ridiculous. Having to throw that Spell Pierce into the Momentum Breaker early on is going to wind up breaking Eric's kneecaps, it looks like, as we're going to Eldritch Evolution away one of the Abhorrent Oculi, and then wind up going for a second one off of our Enigmatic Incarnation.
So very quickly, Bismon went from a board of, just a Llanowar Elf to a board of 2 5/5 flyers and 2 manifest tokens.
Seems kind of fair.
Yeah, just a little bit.
All right, so here we go now. Eric has answer to one of those oculi, but not a second one quite yet in his hand. Now, from Eric's side, what are you kind of hoping to find at this point?
Anger of the Gods.
Yeah, if it's in there, it's gonna come down.
That's kind of all I can think of, and just trying to get a couple of additional points of damage against these Oculus before we cast it. But knowing Bismon, he's probably going to be in a pretty good position to make sure that he doesn't have to worry about an Anger of the Gods coming through to kill the Oculus, and he'll just kind of like do his best to keep him alive.
I think Eric drew Shrapnel Blast number 2.
If only we had land number 4.
So this means now that Eric has the ability to Shrapnel Blast at end of turn, depending what Bismon does, and pending Bismon's Sultai deck has no counter magic boarded in gate number 2. I mean, Eric now is facing down. There's 10 in the air, 4 on the ground, so that's 14 total damage. We do have lifelink available, and Bismon attacking with everything aggressively here is also pretty interesting because you're going to get 2 manifest tokens. Like you said, Frenchie, they're not going to fly. So what's his follow-up?
I'm not sure. Granted, I don't think the 3-power flyer is going to be that effective here to be able to really like close the game. But the fact that we are lifelink and we are going to be trading with something. Just kidding.
Eyeball, manifest eyeball. So Eric decides to pull the trigger on Shrapnel Blast to go after the creatures, thinking there's going to be a trade up from this damage spike, but instead it's just another Oculus getting flipped over, and now Bismon is going to keep the pressure on with double manifest.
Yeah, you have to remember this was a 1 and 2 guess. We don't know what's under the other one, but in all likelihood it is not a creature, and it's just kind of like a dinky like land or something. So this is a really unfortunate circumstance. It could have been some interesting mind games from Bismon's side too, because we don't know what side it was on, but he did grab both manifest tokens and look, might have flipped them around and put the one closer to the creatures that he wanted Eric to block with.
Oh, this is also, I think Eric has 3rd Shrapnel Blast in hand now.
Yeah, but I mean, we first got rid of the blood token, which was fine, but now we're getting rid of either Shadow Spear or
our land. All right, so Eric now is facing down, what is this? This is 16 damage. So as long as Bismon doesn't have a way to pump anything else or flip over another creature, that's 1 more damage.
Or, flip over another Oculus, because why not?
So Eric has the ability now to chump block a manifest that would potentially eat up at least 2 damage, if not more, on a flip over. That would leave Eric with 3 life, and you can blast. Oh, is Eric gonna go blasting?
I mean, I think he's probably bought into it. I'm guessing we're going to Shrapnel Blast away the Shadow Spear here to make sure that we are at least getting rid of an Oculus. But
no, I think we're going face because Bismon's at 9.
Oh, true. I didn't even think about that. I forget. Shrapnel Blast includes just...
Bismon just has 4 eyes.
It won't matter.
Get it. Bismon's wearing his glasses today, so he's got 4 eyes.
Oh, boy.
I'm here all night.
Well, we do have Bismon down at 4, and I wonder if Eric just wants to show him the last Shrapnel Blast, because we have no blue mana up. It doesn't matter.
All right, blast number 1. We got our Manifest Dreads. And Eric, is he going to do is this the top deck? You have it in hand the whole time, Eric.
Yeah, he's messing.
Blast number 2. So 4 eyeballs is not strong enough to beat just 3 pocket sands of shrapnel into those eyes here. So despite having all of the eyes in the world, Eric is going to steal that game from Bismon.
Talk about going to the wire. that was really clutch from Eric, being able to just like patiently sequence these shrapnel blasts and hold on to them till the last possible second when you might need to use them. Turns out we didn't. We were able to close out the game without needing to kill all these creatures. And yeah, my opponent had, by the time I finally did those final 4 points of damage, my opponent had what? It was, doing some quick math, that was 25 power on board.
Yeah, it was. I mean, that Shadow Spear that was played on turn number 3 was extremely relevant there,
Yep.
because if that Spyglass Siren did not gain 6 life over the course of those turns,
Mm-hmm.
Eric was dead to that last attack from Bismon, no matter which way you pitched it, which meant that double Shrapnel Blast turn was not possible.
Yeah.
Also, the fact that you needed the Shadow Spear to cast the three Shrapnel Blasts in the first place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the deck was kind of running pretty thin, frankly, throughout most of the game. Like every little resource that Eric accumulated through that game was used just to the utmost potential. Whether it's being able to close out the game with some very powerful burn spells, whether it was just like getting in just enough points of damage and gaining some life, even just the epic here coming in and being able to be a chump blocker, getting in a couple points of damage, as well as just the little ping to the face. Like every single bit of Eric's game plan lined up really nicely and just was able to efficiently close the game through a sea of eyes.
All eyes were on Eric. And I mean, watching that, all eyes should have been on Eric, because he was able to pull that one out here. So now game number 3, Bismon on the play, changes things a little bit for Eric. You're going up against a Llanowar Elf deck. You're going up against a deck that has plenty of non-creature spells in it, but also tons of creatures that you are tutoring for. So now you have to decide, do the Spell Pierces stay in? Do I bring in burn spells? What am I doing? Because Spell Pierce is great against Eldritch Evolution on turn 2 or from Bismon's side.
Or the turn 3 Enigmatic Incarnation.
Yeah, but is that more valuable than stopping the elf from doing it in the first place?
Yeah, I think you have both, honestly.
I mean, at that point, Eric is like going down on some threats as well. So you have to kind of think like, okay, I'm having Torch Towers, I'm having Shrapnel Blasts, I'm having Spell Pierce. You're probably cutting down on some number of inties. You're
Frankly,
probably...
I'm assuming Smuggler's Copter is really awkward here.
Just
because of how quickly the eyeballs can get into play. Like they're not doing much. You'll get one block and one loot out of it, and then they're gone. So
exactly.
So outside of just being an artifact that you can sacrifice to a Shrapnel Blast, that would be the card I probably would take out for these additional points of interaction, and then really relying on Inti pumping up your creatures, as well as just the, frankly, the Shrapnel Blast burn plan worked out, as well as just Bismon's mana base being a bit painful.
I wonder if Bismon is going to wind up having any of the Black Hand Disruption package kind of coming in. I know Hopeless Nightmare doesn't really Enigmatic Incarnation into Abhorrent Oculus, but it can still provide a speed bump against a deck that is only going to be packing a certain amount of interaction. And looks like Eric does still have at least one of those Smuggler's Copters in his deck there. As Bismon on the other side, I'm like leaning over to the left to try to see. I do see 2 Omen of the Seas and a couple of lands in hand, but no Enigmatic Incarnation quite yet.
Yeah, and I'm sure Eric was breathing a sigh of relief. No green mana, tapped land out the gate, but
Trial of Ambition, I think is what it is.
Yep, Trial of Ambition.
All right, the other enchantment that makes you sacrifice things.
Yeah, but this one, if you play a cartouche, the very, very famed cartouche card type, it's just going to come back to hand. I'm sure that's going to be a very relevant part of the card.
I mean, if you ask Kevin Duda, I'm pretty sure he has a cartouche synergy deck, like ready to be built.
Honestly, yeah.
But it's mono red.
Yeah, of course it's red. Like, it's got to be on brand,
But Voldaren Epicure comes down. That's a burn spell for 1 damage to Bismon's face, and that blood token gets made, so there's potentially something to be ensouled. And, maybe we don't need to bounce the Trial of Ambition. Maybe we just cast the second one.
Yeah, this is now just, this is reminding me of some pixie shenanigans from Standard, but Eric has been hitting all of his land drops on time. Smuggler's Copter's still here, but nothing really to crew, which is a little awkward. Hopefully our next turn does give us something to crew.
Yeah, Bismon actually crucially missed land number 3, so only those 2 lands. Okay, there's land number 3. But kind of stalling out a little bit. Reclamation Sage coming out, probably going to hit that Smuggler's Copter. Might put a dent in what Eric wants to do. Yeah, so Eric not having the creature to crew, not having the presence on board now, even though Bismon stumbled, Eric's the one that's a little behind.
Yeah, but I do see at least an Epicure in hand and possibly some other additional plays. And, we are still dealing bits of damage here and there. We are the one with trinkets on board that can actually continue to advance a game plan, given that blood tokens can let us find additional cards or, fuel a Shrapnel Blast. Not saying the Reclamation Sage isn't impactful, but at this point, it's done most of its work, and now it's a 2-1.
Yeah, that's true. It's a 2-1 that does wind up dying to a chump block from this Epicure, but Bismon may want to keep this one around a little bit. There's that Omen of the Sea that we wind up seeing in the opening hand. That's going to wind up hitting the battlefield here on turn number 5, I believe it is. Well, usually I'm looking at the lands, but I know Bismon missed a land drop here.
Yeah, I believe this is turn 5. Both of our players have been off a little off curve with lands, but realistically, Bismon's deck is definitely the one that needs the land drops. Izzet Ensoul tends to be a deck that can run pretty well off of 3, maybe 4 lands in a grindier game. Doesn't need that much and can just use the card quality of these low mana value spells to be able to close.
Yeah, unfortunately, it looks like we did want to have Omen of the Sea being cast in main phase. We scryed to, drew a card, and did not wind up actually hitting a land off of that.
All right, and Blast Face. Seems like it's Blast Face.
All right, Blast Face o'clock. So one of those Shrapnel Blasts goes.
I saw another one.
All right. All right, that's at least 6 life for Bismon here. So Eric only has to find 6 points damage. Den of the Bugbear could represent 4 if it goes unblocked, and Epicure is another 1 here, maybe 2 if we map with it. But Eric says let's tussle. That's going to be an instant chump block from Bismon.
Yeah, I think Bismon knows that he's pretty close to just getting blown out by another pair of Shrapnel Blasts. I think the last game probably is gonna be ingrained in his memory of I'm never safe.
Yeah, and Eric, like you said, if there's at least 1 more blast in hand, Bismon is at a virtual 6 life here. Looks like there's been a Spell Pierce that's been held up this entire time, so Bismon goes for Momentum Breaker with no creatures on the battlefield.
That's fine. We're probably just gonna Spell Pierce here just to make sure that we don't have the enchantment to sacrifice for any reason. I kind of like it.
But getting the two trials too, so this is interesting. Maybe just not wanting to start your engine since you can gain life at that
There's
point.
also the being forced to discard a card, and we were probably going to discard the Spell Pierce anyway, so might as well lose the value. Getting another creature in play is good for Eric to make sure that we can try and get at least that 1 point across, so we're just 2 blasts away. We do have 1 Den of the Bugbear in our mana base, and withdrawing another land, we now have an online creature land next turn, which is huge for Eric because we were just on 3.
Yeah, so there's that face-up land. Looks like Mystical Dispute, Shrapnel Blast are the other 2 cards in hand for Eric. The turn gets passed over to Bismon, who is still struggling to find lands, but has at least 5 now with that pathway being played. Now we have to decide. It looks like Bismon is going to start tapping out, and
it's evolution time, and I am assuming that we were just playing around Spell Pierce, and we already used it, so...
Yeah, that can't be Mystical Disputed for 1 mana, so Eric's going to get a little bit punished right there for cracking the map token.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like we kind of had to at this point, because now we still are presenting the creature land in the following turns, which does make additional blockers, but we're going to just use the Shrapnel Blast to make sure that the Oculus never gets value, basically blanking the turn that Bismon just had while also getting rid of the elf. So
it's like a
not
3
bad.
for 2, right?
Yeah, that's pretty solid, and 3 for 2, realistically, one of the things that you got rid of was a blood token.
Yeah, that's true. And we saw this map available if we want to start cracking that on our Spyglass Siren, fix the top of our deck a little bit, see if there's anything we want there. But like you said, too, there's this Den of the Bugbear here that can represent another token. That's 5 damage, and then 6 damage next turn. Would be lethal if Bismon doesn't have a blocker.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so, and I think I also see a Metallic Rebuke and some other stuff, so we might just want to be holding up counter magic instead of going all in on attacks. I can, honestly, Eric's kind of, it is in Eric's, the ball is in Eric's court here, because we're the ones that are on the beatdown plan, and we're the ones who are presenting all of the questions, given that we have an Oculus, never mind. No Oculus is coming in on end step because we were just able to use a nice, clean Mystical Dispute to counter it.
Yep, and now this map token also hanging around can be used as a little tricksy improvise from this Metallic Rebuke, or wield a pair of scissors here, as now we're swinging in for 6 damage, puts Bismon all the way down to 4, and we still have exactly 3 mana available for that Metallic Rebuke.
This is a great place to be if I am in Eric's seat.
Eyeball?
Metallic Rebuke counters all spells?
Yeah, just counters
How
Unleash
about
Phase
that?
3. And
Yep.
that's it. Eric's going to take that one off of some powerful interaction and counter magic there. Eyeball does not wind up sticking. Metallic Rebuke says no, and Eric is going to go 2-1 this evening.
Yeah. Congrats to Eric on getting the win, especially getting the win over someone who he's definitely not had the best time against, especially on the streams. He's always felt like Bismon's gotten the better of him on stream, so he's I'm sure he's pretty happy to, finally put one in his favor.